Yeah, it started in 51 and ended in 91.
Goodness.
Yeah. So it served it for a long time, and it was the need. It was a solid platform, and the need precipitated its continued use.
Well, and you mentioned South Africa a little while ago. This aircraft was used by the South African Air Force in much the same way with the patrol. That coastline off of Cape of Good Hope was, and Cape Horn, I guess that was heavily trafficked as
Very
people came
much.
around the African continent. But it was a place where South Africa recognized some vulnerability as well. So this aircraft was used to patrol that area. Was also you mentioned about that incident where it did sink a ship, didn't it?
Yes, it did. So the South Africans were using the Short Sunderland flying boat, the leftover World War II aircraft, and those, over time they wore out. So they purchased eight Shackletons from the British, and for South African service, and they used it between 1957 and 1984. And again, it was just what you said. They patrolled that Cape Hope area, particularly to look for Soviet ships coming in and out, tracking them. Uh, it did say they lost one Shackleton. It flew into a mountain and killed everyone on board. So they did lose one of them to an accident. But the most famous thing that they did was there was an oil tanker that ground offshore, a couple of miles offshore of that one of the capes there as you're coming around the corner.
Yeah,
It,
lost its steering or something, right?
exactly. Yeah. The something about water got into the engines and killed it, and they couldn't get it started. Anyway, it was called the SS Wafra oil tanker. This is March of 1971, and apparently so it's stuck on this reef. They go out and they try to tow it away. The line breaks. They take another boat out. It breaks. They get a tug that actually gets it loose and gets it out into the water, but it starts to break apart. Well, all this time, it's leaking thousands and millions of gallons of oil. And apparently, there is an African penguin colony that was, on a small island very nearby, and there's all kinds of other maritime fish and wildlife, birds, what have you there. So they decided we're just going to take what the biggest part and tow it out to sea and just sink it to try to stop the oil leaking on the surface. So they hooked it up, towed it about 200 miles offshore. And the interesting part is they had Buccaneers jets with
Hmm.
some anti-ship missiles, and they sent five or six of these Buccaneers out to sink it. Well, they shot it full. I think it said 7 missiles struck it. It would not sink. So they said, "All right, Shackletons, you're up." They took their depth charges out there, and after about 6 or 8 depth charges, they sunk it.
So did the crew paint a silhouette of an oil tanker underneath the cockpit there?
I'm sure they did. I
I,
haven't
I
seen that, but I wouldn't imagine.
I imagine there's a story about it out there somewhere if we dig deep enough.